Career Path Tips for Junior Academic from a Wise Ting. Today we are here with Professor Jochen Wirtz. Hello, Jochen. How are you doing?
Hi, Park. I'm delighted to be with you here.
Thank
Looking
you so
forward to
much for
our
your
interview.
time. Thank you so much for your time. So let's start with the first question of tips for young academic or junior academic that they want for their career progression or their job promotion. So what is your tips when it's come to say service role?
Oh, I mean, service usually for junior faculty is
Yes.
not that important. Yeah, you will be mostly evaluated on research, and then
Yeah.
depending on the institution, also on teaching. But I think service is still important because you have to demonstrate that you are a good citizen, that you are someone your colleagues like to have around for a long time, because if they give you tenure, that's a lifetime appointment here. So I think it's good as a junior citizen or junior faculty to show that you are a good citizen, that you are willing to help, that often there's open house, there are smaller things, let's say with a PhD program, to meet with other candidates who may want to, potential future assistant professors who want to join the department. So I think it's always good to offer and to be available, and especially when asked by senior faculty, then to also play along and show that the overall well-being of the department is also close to your heart. People like to work with nice people, so be a nice person.
Yes, yes, definitely. Can I please ask for an example of like what might be a good service role that doesn't take too much time of a junior academic?
For example, one could take care of the seminar series of the department, or take certain roles in the PhD program of the department. These are all things that are not terribly time intensive, but show that you can organize, that you can relate, that you can persuade people.
Yes, I think that is a great suggestion, especially for young academics, so that they can also build their connection and networking as well with the speaker and the audience. So you have touched that is very important for the research and teaching. Could you please explore a little bit in terms of the research aspect?
Yeah, most universities give tenure only to research faculty. So if you want to have a tenured position in a good school, they will primarily evaluate you on your research. And depending again on what level the organization is, what league it plays in, there are some very standard evaluation criteria for tenure decision. The first is, of course, do you have the numbers and the quality? Of course, every university will tell you, oh, it's not a numbers game, you're not bean counters. But believe me, if your number is too small, it's going to be very difficult to get tenure. So you have to suss out what is a good number people need to get promoted. And the best way to find this out, you just look at recent cases that got their promotion at that institution, and you can quickly see, so what's the standard here? The next is numbers and quality is one thing, but the next important thing is people want to have people who stand for something, who have a sort of a theme, a positioning, who have a name for a particular topic. That means anywhere in the world where they drop your name, what topics come to mind? Do they know what your key contribution is to the discipline? So there has to be a thematic kind of contribution throughout your research. It's no good to have 4 different papers and 4 very different topics here. Ideally, these 4 papers build onto another and have an overarching story to it. The next is really people also look at independence. If all of your papers are with your former PhD supervisor, then all alarm bells will ring. So people want to see, yes, of course, your PhD work, you can publish with your PhD supervisor. But then people want to see that you have worked independently since. And ideally, either you have single authored papers, or you have papers with other junior people. And then it also, sometimes it helps you show that other senior people are keen to work with you. And let's say you have 2 or 3 papers with another senior person from your field. It shows, hey, that senior person enjoyed working with you, and you contributed, and therefore that person is willing to work with you again. But be careful, don't just have papers with senior people. Always demonstrate too that you're independent. That includes, as I said, single paper, junior authors. And also, if you always publish with co-authors, that at least some of them you are first author. Yeah, so independence is important. And the fourth one here really is impact. So is that research you have interesting to others? And I mean, the key metric we look here is very often Google Scholar as a leading indicator of impact. And sometimes too, let's say if your research is being picked up by the broad media, I mean, if the Wall Street Journal or the Economist writes about you, or CNN picks up a story about your research, these are also nice things about impact, and others could be best paper awards, best conference papers. So anything that suggests that others in the academic community and also in industry find that, yeah, your work resonates with us. We are keen on it. So I think this sort of a comprehensive kind of package you would have for a research dossier. And I mean, my overarching sort of recommendation is this is very tough to achieve. And the only way you achieve this is if you're really excited about your own research. So that means the topic you pick has to be something that's close to your heart, something you're passionate about. And the other key thing I would really recommend is don't hide in your office. Go to conferences, go to workshops, present at department seminars. So don't be shy. Yes, it's always hard to stand in front of experts and people who you think know a lot more than you do and are a lot more experienced. But hey, they know you're an assistant professor. And most people actually would like to help you, and you get feedback. And only if you put yourself out there can people really help you. So I think that in a nutshell, this is how I think you can approach your research portfolio.
Yes, those are actually a lot of amazing suggestions, especially when you talk about, building your own brand image to be known for something. So that,
Yes.
when we think of some specific areas, such as, say, if I think about services marketing, I would think of your name, first.
Yeah.
So to be known for something is also help us to create our brand image, which come to the point that you mentioned that don't publish 4 or 5 different papers in a different way. And that, because we're not going to have the identity of doing something in specific, I noticed that a lot of the early career research actually trying their best to do as many paper, and they come to the loop of publishing anything that they can see fit, on their books or their workload at the time. So it might not work well for the long-term strategy for those of us who publish too many in too many areas. So 1 or 2 areas should be more than enough and be well known for those. So I think that we should all take that suggestions. And you also touched the point about we need to have the number of paper, but also very important that we need to have the good quality of the paper. So when we talk about quality of paper, could you please let me know a little bit, like, what do you mean by good quality paper?
I mean, the committee, of course, they will read your key papers. I mean, in every tenure dossier, you're asked to put up your best 3 papers or your best 5 papers, depending. And the committee will look at it. I mean, is that sound? The method, the analysis, is it interesting? Is it well written, and all of that? And then, of course, the impact also signals quality. But I think the overarching signal is really the sort of the rating of the journal you publish in. Is this an A star, an A, a B, or a C journal, right? So I think it's important you pick depending on which institution you're in and what they value. I mean, what they require, what level of publications they require, that you hit those types of journals. So some schools, for example, reward FT50 journals because, I mean, these publications there will help their programs to be rated more highly in the Financial Times ranking. Yeah, so I mean, it depends a bit. Schools have different criteria how they judge journals, and you should understand that and orientate your publishing strategy a bit accordingly.
That is actually a very good strategy that we should always understand our target audience. In this case, we are so talking about target school or institution that we want to be in. So we need to understand like, okay, what is our school look after? And then we build our strategy towards that.
Yes.
Let's say it is important for research. How about teaching? Do you think is it important to do, say, course development or program development, those type of things?
Yeah, I mean, teaching education is often not quite what gets you promoted, but if you do badly, it can prevent a promotion. Yeah, so
Yes, I can think
so
of
my
some case.
university will not give you tenure if you haven't taught at the master's level and if you don't teach well. And well typically means at least above the department average. So yeah, should be better than your department on the average. That's sort of a hygiene factor, if you will. You have to be a real rock star in terms of research if your teaching is bad that you still get a promotion. So don't count on that our teaching doesn't matter. It's not true. Actually, if you're a really outstanding teacher, it can help your promotion. So at the margin, if your research is sort of could be either considered meeting the threshold for promotion or maybe not quite meeting, it's just at the balance here. Then if you have outstanding service and outstanding education, that will push in your favor. And I mean, here, I think there are sort of three things you can look at teaching. First is simply your teaching ratings. And that's a quantitative number, and everyone looks at it. And ideally, that number is outstanding, of course, right? Ideally.
Yes.
How you get there is, and it's not rocket science. I mean, students are in general quite frank in their feedback. So most universities have anonymous teaching feedback evaluations that are independent of the grading of the course. I mean, at my university, the professors will never see their teaching ratings until the grades are finalized and accepted by the Board of Examination. Yeah. So in that sense, there can never be sort of a fear of revenge or the class rated me badly, so I give them bad grades, right? That doesn't happen. And so, and that I always look at, I mean, number one, you can look at your quantitative. I mean, look, I've been in customer satisfaction research for a long time. I've been on the Teaching Academy. I was a founding member of the Teaching Academy at the National University of Singapore. And there are always some people who think, oh, teaching ratings don't really work. If your course is very easy, students give you good ratings. To me, that's all big nonsense. Students in general love to learn. I've seen really hard courses because I'm vice dean MBA programs, so I can think of one of our professors who's a really tough professor, but he has the highest teaching ratings of all MBA instructors, and he's in a quantitative subject, which is not easy. So it's not true that if you're tough, that people downgrade you. It is if you're tough and you don't teach well, so you don't bring your students along with you, then they get frustrated. But if you demand a lot and you enable your students, they feel they learn something, they will love you for that. So I think look at these quantitative numbers carefully, and most schools give you what is your average rating versus your department versus the whole school. You know exactly where you are. I think as a young faculty, you should strive to hit sort of the top 35 percentile. I mean, you're young, you can connect to the students really well. You're motivated. So you should be able to get top 35%. And how to get there is, I would recommend, look very carefully at what do people like about you. So these are your strengths you should cement. So make sure you maintain that. And the other is on the things that are sort of on suggested improvements, or what people don't like about you, what they don't like about the course, what they don't like about teaching. So that is the stuff to really work on. I mean, don't dismiss it. This is students' response to your teaching. And even if you think the students are wrong, there's something you do that creates that perception with your students. You have to figure out what that is, and you have to address it. And I mean, depending on the school, we have a Teaching Excellence Council at NUS Business School here. And they have mentors. That's a confidential personal arrangement. And the mentor can look at your course outline, can look at your assessments, and will also visit your class to give you feedback. So it's completely personal and confidential. So there will be no reporting. But as someone senior who sits in your class to give you feedback, and again, it may seem a little bit odd to have someone be in the class to assess you, but believe me, it's fantastic development. Get rid of the shyness here. Open up your classroom, invite your colleagues to sit in. So for me, any one of my colleagues, let's say, who is sort of assigned, let's say, to teach services marketing at any level, they ask, hey, can I see what you do in class? I said, sure, please join me, no problem, right? I just introduce my colleagues to the class and they sit in. And one thing I do as well, because I teach quite intensive courses, often full days, and for me, by the time I get feedback at the end of the class, it's a bit late, and then feedback at the end of a course seems to be a little generic. So what I do is I have a teaching assistant, and this teaching assistant takes every class 3 or 4 people, and they each time different people. So no one has to do this more than once in a course, but I don't ask them for quantitative rating. I just give them a very quick link to 3 questions. Today's 2 hours is a 2-hour class each time. Today's class, what are the 3 things you like best about this class? What are the 3 things you like least about it? And what are 3 suggested improvements? And this now gives me very specific to one class, to one case, to one sort of topic I was teaching on what resonated with these students. You may argue 3 or 4 students are not representative. Yeah, sure. But then, hey, I do this throughout the whole semester, and some stuff is subject and content specific. Others is more teaching style specific. And I can then adjust the course in real time. I look at the feedback at night. I even tell the students sometimes in the morning, look, some people felt the following. Why I'm doing it this way is for this and that reason. So please bear with me that there is some system behind it. So I can also manage expectations and explain. Now, so I think this is the whole teaching part of it. But then, of course, I think you want to get tenure, you want to show some leadership also in education, which then means, if you can develop new courses, get involved into curriculum development of programs like an undergraduate program or a specialization or an MSc program, do that because you can see what goes into something like this. And the last one really is teaching scholarship. So, I mean, I love to write cases. And why? I have real war stories to share with my students because I interviewed these people or the CEO or something. I collected those data and worked with the company. I have firsthand insights to it. And I published this case. And I teach the case. And then often I also do an interview with the CEO or some people, and I can show a 3-minute, 5-minute video of that CEO in my class when I teach the case. So I think this would be sort of my education portfolio, if you will. And again, here, I mean, I think for tenure, people look at, so of course, teaching ratings, teaching scholarship, teaching leadership matter. On top of that, people tend to look, do you teach at different levels or do you just teach undergraduate? Do you teach undergraduate and NSC and MBA and PhD, for example? Do you just teach your pet topic electives or PhD students, or can you also teach a large classroom, a core module, and then you teach also some electives? And the other is try to be able to teach at least 2 or 3 courses to show that you're flexible and you can pick up a portfolio if need arises, because most schools, they will not push new courses onto assistant professors. But the minute you have tenure or a full professor, and there is a need to teach a certain subject, but very often senior people will be asked to do that, right? Junior people have to do their research first. Exactly. So that's in a nutshell here, if you will, my take on the teaching portfolio.
Yes, that is a very interesting and good, insightful suggestion, and also a very good practice, especially when you're talking about learning, get feedback from the student, and then we learn from what we're doing good, what we're doing not good, and improve it further. I think that is really appreciate the way you talk about that and how you link the industry, especially research, consultation things that you have been doing into the classroom. So it's bring the research impact and findings into the class. So I think that is really good. Now, if I were to touch, say, if you can go back in time to, a few years back and then tell your younger self one or two suggestions, what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would look more at impact in my earlier work. So for me, I was working on at that time on sort of quite specific topics in consumer behavior. And it was fun at that time. It was quite technical at that time, but the audience you have for those kind of topics is more narrow. Today, I really enjoy thought leadership papers, broader-based papers to work in with teams on it papers. I should have done that a little earlier. This would be sort of one thing, to be more in the community, to be more with thought leaders on that kind of papers, because you see how senior people think and how they work. And I think the learning would have been great. I should have done that earlier. I have only been doing this now for 12 years. I could have done this 25 years ago.
Yes, but you have, your impact is so unbelievable, amazing. So this is career path tips for junior academic form of Vice Dean. Thank you so much, Professor Jochen Wirtz.
Thank you, Marc.
Thank you.